Good morning. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. It is Sunday morning here in Florida. Let me adjust the camera just a little bit. I want to make sure you get some of what we've got up here on the whiteboard. So this morning I want to take a few minutes. I've been teaching the bridging course more frequently lately, and workshops here, as well as I did one in Virginia recently. And with more people attempting to understand the course, I wanted to put some more structure around how people should try to understand it, because there's formulas involved, or approaches, or structures or frameworks that are used to construct curricula. And if you don't understand that framework, then you might be tempted, you might either misunderstand the intention of the lessons, or you might attempt to supplement it with other material, thinking that it's missing certain elements. So what I want to do is talk about kind of the what and why of certain things. So when I teach the bridging material, what I do is I use a high-level outline, which is 4 steps. And that high-level outline is singular movements, serialized movements, so movements in flow from one to another, parallel movements, and those parallel movements are typically things that help you ensure that you're commanding the during, where you're doing both defense and counter control in the same timing, and that has the highest value. That's called either in Chinese Lin Sil Dai Dar, or in Okinawan martial arts it's Kobuichi, or Kobuitai, I believe. So that's the 3rd step, parallel, and then the 4th step is parallel transitioning into serial. So when you have parallel transitioning into serial, you can essentially fill all the timing gaps, fill any problems of timing, so that if you have taken control of timing and the attacker is now responding to you, that you don't lose that momentum. So that's what you want to accomplish at that point. So when we do this, we fill in all kinds of lessons to help us ensure that we're meeting the goals of good singular movements, good serialized movements, good parallel movements. So the approach is that when we're training the singular movements, it's one motion of the body on one side of the body, and we're then using that focus, that reduced focus of just one side of the body, to deep dive on skill sets that are really helpful for bridging with a singular arm, assuming that a singular arm is going to manage potentially another bridge and attempt to counterattack through that set of obstacles. So when we're focusing on the singular arm, we're doing things like focusing on making sure we're using the appropriate hand to reduce self-flanking, those possibilities, and set up flanking opportunities for ourselves. We're gaining a deep respect for the elbow, why it's dangerous, so why you need to preemptively shut it down and how, and then also how to use the elbow's mobility to maneuver the other person's limb as needed. We talk a lot about leverage at that point, using the appropriate leverage from our anatomy onto the leverage points of the other person's anatomy, applying our strongest yet mobile segments of our anatomy against their portions of anatomy in a way that you attempt to shut down their mobility the best, either through leverage or managing the joints. We work on structure, using body structure, using good structure of the arm, good structure of the back, the chest, the lats, and the whole body. And then we work on unified body, how to unify the power of the body into a singular arm movement. We work on seeking the opponent's center to make sure that our things don't just bounce off, and through rotation that we penetrate deeply. We work on those skills. We work on making sure that when we do our bridging motions, we set ourselves up for the next shot. So, imagine if you're a pool player and you play pool and you play one ball at a time. Well, you're not going to do very well until you learn how to then control the ball through that shot to set the ball up into the position for the next shot that you want to take so that you could then run the table. So you want to do the same thing. When you use your bridging motions, you want to make it possible to have a counter shot immediately. So we work on those skills as well. That's not a useful skill unless you also have short power, so the ability to, when you're in a position, not retract and reset to be able to throw from there, but to have the power to be able to shoot directly from wherever you're at. That short power is critically important for bridging, and so then you're going to want to use that closest weapon to the closest target. And we identify the best targets for the different bridging positions depending on if you're on top or on underneath, on the inside or the outside, proper hand or wrong hand. And then we work a lot on timing. So these are all skill sets involved with singular bridging motions. So again, this progression being singular, serial, parallel, and then parallel flowing into singular, that progression, there's a lot of time spent on singular motions to make sure that these are testable. You want to make sure that the individual motions are testable from a skill perspective, because we're trying not to stay caught in the traditional paradigm of memorization for advancement. We want to have testable skill development leading into the curriculum, so that if you're awarding belts or ranks or sashes or whatever you're awarding, that you can do it based on testable skill sets instead. So that's an important part of what we're working to accomplish here. So serialized, things in series happen one after another. So in terms of timing, we're talking about things that happen, if my hand goes out, and my hand comes back, if my hand goes out, usually a twist of the waist is about what we call a beat. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, I hit on the half beat. Well, if you can hit on the half beat, they can hit on the half beat, so let's just call that a beat. That's my opinion on how to teach that. I might get some hate for that, but that's just something we can talk about more later. I'm not really wanting to talk about that in depth right at the moment. But from a serialized perspective, one of the things that I used to do for students was ask them to take these transitions between attack and defense. Right? You've got attack and defense, and attack and defense, and if you run the permutations on that, really there's 4 options, right? Attack to attack, attack to defense, defense to attack, defense to defense. I used to ask students to basically go do the homework, take the techniques that I'd given them, and practice building their own combinations that represented those series or chained movements. And they had a hard time, and it's not that surprising, because students need examples to build from. So if you don't give them enough examples to bootstrap the process, then they can fail. So what I've done instead now is I've built into the bridging curriculum a series of lessons. Lessons 9, 19, 30, 31, and 34 are all about the transitions of either defense to defense. We do a whole series of 18 transitions, lots of good material in there. Defense to attack, those are all the short power and filling the gap training lessons. And then we've got some attack to defense lessons where we focus on defense through retraction activities. So those lessons are all built in, they all help with serialized flow. So, one of the kind things that people often say when I demonstrate techniques or kata or things, when I put videos out, they say, wow, your flow looks really good, it's so smooth. Well, that comes from doing my own, since many years ago, taking what I was given and working my own sets of new combinations based on those. So kata or taolu, those are all things that somebody else gave you, right? One of my teachers said a form is like a story already told. At some point, you need to figure out how to write your own stories, and you can start that with combinations. And I highly recommend focusing very heavily on combinations of 2 movements, no more, because you can construct longer chains of combinations of 5 from sets of 2. So you do 2A plus A and B, and then a B to C, and then a C to D. And then that gives you the amount of combination, that gives you the length of a long combo but your focus on the transitions really is only between 2 techniques at a time, so that you can dive in deeply and really work on focus, speed, power, footwork, unified timing, all those things with every transition from one technique to another. So that flow is an important part of your development of body dynamics, body awareness, and power, and that kind of thing. So it's really important that you deep dive and have a series of structured lessons around serialized technique flow for the student. Now, parallel really is kind of the creme de la creme. It really is the goal that we're after from a training methodology, because when you can do things in parallel, you're doing things now with 2 arms. So serial is single is obviously a single arm. Serialized is a single arm. What can a single arm transition to and from? And now parallel is where you put the left side and the right side of the body back together again to work on what you're trying to accomplish in the during. There's only a handful of things that are really possible or likely in the during, and I know you can't see this very well because the ink's starting to fade, but I'll read them to you. So in the during, you can do things like bridge and push, you can bridge and pull, you can bridge and hit with the second arm, you can bridge and hit with just one arm, you can bridge and kick, you can dodge and hit, you can dodge and kick, right? These are kind of the main options of what you can do in the during, and the ones that don't involve kicking or dodging really are in the parallel. So bridge and push, bridge and push, bridge and pull, bridge and hit with the second arm. These are things in parallel. So you want to work on making sure that you have the body coordination, that when you block, you also can hit. When you block, you can also hit. When you block, you can also hit, right? So you want to build up the skill sets to be able to make that possible, and those are really the skill sets that we put in lessons 14, 15, and 28. Those are a part of the filling the dead space lessons that help you make sure that you're filling those gaps, so you don't have the activity of one arm happening and the other arm is dead for a beat or 2 or worse. So don't let those dead beats lay. If you identify those in training, figure out ways to fill those gaps, and that's what those lessons are for. And then lastly, as you saw, I had the 4 permutations of attack and defense transitions. Lastly, step 4, parallel into serial, is all about doing attack to attack transitions, but on both sides of the body now. What we're saying is something like, just to give a simple example, if in the very first beat I perform a high block and a punch on the first beat, that's a parallel technique that works in the during. It accomplishes both defense and counter control. It's high value. It represents Kobuichi or Linsil Daidar, right? High bridge and a punch to the face. Now my next movement, I need it to be something that will continue to affect the attacker's OODA loop, so that the attacker can't regain the initiative and start driving, because I want to lead the stance, right? So he punches, I punch, hopefully that gives me the opening to counter punch on the second beat to break the nose. Just to give one very simple example. There are many, many, many examples I could give. But anyhow, what I wanted to do is just lay this out for people who are in the bridging course already, or who might be interested in the bridging course, understanding what the structure of a good element of curriculum would look like that scaffolds out skill sets from simple to more complex, from single arm to double arm, and really covers the bases of a series of skill sets, all the way from, again, flanking proper hand, the value and danger of the elbow, using leverage appropriately to counter strength, using structure, unifying the body for power, seeking the center so you have penetrative power, keeping the point on line so you can use short power to be effective, to use your closest weapon against closest targets, really deep dive into timing, develop flow, develop transitions, develop the ability to act in the during effectively, and then to develop the ability to not only take the initiative, but maintain it until your counter control is finalized. anyhow, if you're interested in this stuff, please either come down for a workshop or join the class, buy the curriculum so that you have a copy of the workbook and access to the Facebook group where you can see video examples and talk to other people about using this. And then if you need any help adapting this to your style, if you're Taekwondo or you're Kung Fu or you're Karate, I've worked with people or grappling background. Grappling folks really love this material because it helps with the hand game, the bridging, the sometimes glossed over most important first part of the engagement. So most engagements have roughly 3 elements or phases. There's the entry, the repositioning, and the finish. And so if you're a grappler and you start with a tie-up, you've just kind of blod through the entry. That's not good if you really are doing this stuff for something other than competition as well. So don't neglect the most important first phase, the entry phase of an engagement. So again, look for workshops here. If you're interested, host me out for a workshop at your location. They're 2 days, 2 very full days, lots and lots of skill development. And then if you're a teacher and you're interested in having all the details, the workbook, the diagrams with all the examples from high level to detail level of all the material, then reach out to me and we can talk about that. But have a great day. It's great to be here. So reach out if you have any questions or comments. Thanks. Take care.